Imagine waking up tomorrow morning. Let's say it's a Tuesday. The alarm on your phone doesn't go off. The battery died overnight and didn't charge. You wake up on your own, a bit late, but there's something off about the light. You look outside and the street lamps are dark. But it's more than the darkness. It's the sound.
Or the complete lack of it.
Exactly. It's the sound of silence. A real deep silence. You go to the window, and usually, even at 5 a.m., there's that background hum of the world,
The highway roar, even from miles away.
The highway roar, the garbage truck backing up 3 streets over, the big HVAC unit on the roof of the building next door. But today, there's nothing. Just maybe the wind, a bird. It feels heavy, doesn't it? Like the air itself has stopped moving.
It's physically disorienting. That silence is the sound of a world without combustion. We don't realize it, but the soundtrack of our entire modern life is the constant sound of explosions. Yeah, tiny controlled explosions and millions of car engines, massive turbines spinning natural gas into electricity. When all of that just stops, the silence isn't peaceful. It's profound. It's jarring.
And that feeling, that jarring silence, is the setting for today's deep dive. We are looking at a really fascinating report. It's titled, "The Day the Pumps Ran Dry." And its whole premise is a thought experiment. It's what the authors call a day zero scenario.
Right. And we should be really, really clear about what this is and what it isn't. This is not some prediction that the world's going to run out of oil next Tuesday.
Right. It's not a doomsday prophecy.
No, and it's not a policy paper about a nice gradual green transition over the next 30 years. It's a simulation. It's an engineering stress test. It asks a very specific and brutal question. What happens if all economically viable crude oil, natural gas, and coal are exhausted or just become inaccessible all at once?
It's a cliff edge, as they call it. And I have to be honest, when I first read the premise, my first thought was, okay, this is just some kind of disaster fantasy.
Right.
Why would we want to spend an hour fantasizing about the world ending?
I get that, but the authors argue that's the wrong way to look at it.
How so?
Think of it like a chaos monkey test in software engineering. Big tech companies do this. They have programs that deliberately go into their servers and just break things, randomly shut things down.
To see what else fails.
Yeah.
Right. To find the weak spot.
Precisely. We're doing that, but for civilization. We're looking at what the report calls the cascading systemic failures of our modern industrial complexity. The goal is to truly understand how fragile our systems are by mentally pulling out the foundation fossil fuels and just watching to see which walls collapse first.
And spoiler alert, a lot of walls collapse. So we're going to walk through this chronologically, just like the report does. We'll start with what they call the immediate shock, which is roughly the first month.
The first 720 hours.
Then we'll move into the adjustment crisis. So that's 1 month to about 5 years out. And then finally, we'll look at the new equilibrium, which is what the world might look like a decade later. But I do want to warn you, we are going to get into the weeds today. We aren't just going to say the lights go out. We are going to ask why. We're looking at the chemistry, the logistics, the physics behind it all.
Because the devil is in those details. The collapse doesn't happen because of some sort of magic or a vague idea. It happens because of very specific mechanical and chemical dependencies that we've built our entire world on and, for the most part, completely ignore.
So let's start the clock. It's hour zero. The pumps are dry. The gas stations are empty. The simulation begins. And the first thing that hits isn't starvation. It isn't even the lights going out right away. It's movement.
It's what the report calls the logistics heart attack.
Let's break that down. We all live in a just-in-time economy, JIT. We've probably all heard that acronym, but I don't think we really appreciate just how tight that wire we're walking on is.
No, we don't. Think of the global economy as a river. A century ago, we had huge reservoirs, massive warehouses with 6, maybe even 9 months of inventory of everything. But that's incredibly expensive. It's capital just sitting there.
So we got rid of it.
We got rid of it. Now, the warehouse is the truck driving down the highway. The warehouse is the container ship halfway across the Pacific. Retailers, and especially grocery stores, operate on an inventory-to-sales ratio that is just razor thin. A typical grocery store has about 72 hours of food on hand.
72 hours.
3 days.
3 days. So the moment the diesel stops flowing into the trucks, that floating warehouse stops floating. It's that simple.
And most of our stuff is on the water, right?
Something like 90% of global trade by volume is maritime. It's on a ship. When the bunker fuel runs out, those ships are just stranded. They become these floating prisons of goods that can never reach port. But let's zoom in from the ocean to the highway. because this is where the day zero scenario gets really, really technical and honestly kind of terrifying.
It's not just that the diesel tanks on the trucks are empty. There's another, more subtle failure point. It's a specific fluid called AdBlue.
AdBlue. Oh, you mean that diesel exhaust fluid you see at the truck stops?
That's the one. Modern diesel trucks, basically anything built in the last 15 years in North America or Europe, are required by law to have a selective catalytic reduction system. It's for emissions control.
Right, to make them cleaner.
Exactly. And that system requires a constant injection of this fluid, DEF, which is basically just urea and deionized water.
Okay, but if it's an apocalypse scenario, surely the truck drivers can just ignore the emission standards, just bypass the system.
You'd think so, but they can't. It's hard-coded into the truck's main computer, the engine control unit. If that little tank of AdBlue runs dry, the truck's computer will automatically put the engine into limp mode, like 5 miles an hour. Or, in many cases, it just shuts the engine down completely. It will not restart.
You're kidding me. So even if a trucker managed to find a secret stash of diesel?
If their AdBlue tank is empty, that truck is a brick. It is a multi-ton paperweight. And here is the real kicker, the cascading failure part.
Go on.
AdBlue is made from ammonia. And how do we make industrial-scale ammonia?
I feel like I should know this from high school chemistry.
The Haber-Bosch process.
Oh.
And the primary feedstock for the Haber-Bosch process is natural gas.
Oh, no.
Yes. So the natural gas supply shuts off. That means the ammonia plants shut down. That means the AdBlue production stops. And within days, the entire trucking fleet of the Western world computer locks itself and refuses to move.
Wow. That is a truly insidious level of interconnectedness.
It's the definition of a cascading failure. A system designed to save the environment in normal times becomes the kill switch for the entire supply chain in a crisis.
And that leads directly to what the report calls the last mile problem.
Exactly, because it doesn't matter if you have a strategic reserve of grain in a giant silo in Kansas. That's great. But if you can't get it onto a truck to move it the last 50 miles to the regional distribution center, and then the last 10 miles to the Safeway or the Kroger, it effectively does not exist for the people who need it.
It's just a pile of grain in the middle of nowhere.
A pile of grain that might as well be on the moon.
Talk to me a little more about the food supply, specifically the cold chain, because that's something I feel like we take completely for granted. Refrigeration.
We absolutely do. About 70% of all the food we eat in the developed world has passed through the cold chain. And you should visualize it as a seamless, unbroken relay race of cold.
Okay.
It starts at the food processor, goes into a refrigerated warehouse, gets loaded onto a refrigerated truck or reefer, and then gets unloaded into a refrigerated back room at the grocery store, and finally put into the refrigerated display case.
And that whole chain depends on
a constant supply of electricity and diesel. The second the trucks stop on the highway, the diesel engines that power the reefer units on their trailers also stop.
So you just have millions of tons of meat, dairy, produce, frozen foods sitting in trucks on the side of the interstate.
And within 24 to 48 hours, it's not food anymore. It's a massive, distributed biological waste event. The first sign that the world has truly changed wouldn't be hunger pains. It would be the smell coming from the industrial parks and distribution centers on the edge of town.
God, that's a powerful image.
You'd be losing a massive percentage of the world's available calories to spoilage before a single person has even had a chance to eat them.
Now, this is usually the point of the conversation where someone, a listener probably, is thinking, okay, but wait. The government has stockpiles, right? What about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve?
Ah, the SPR. It's a great psychological comfort blanket, but when you look closely, it's a blanket full of holes in this specific scenario.
Why?
Well, the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve holds hundreds of millions of barrels of crude oil.
Crude, not gasoline.
Not gasoline, not diesel, not jet fuel. It's raw crude oil stored in vast underground salt caverns in Louisiana and Texas. You can't put that in a truck's gas tank. You have to get it out of the ground and then get it to a refinery.
And refineries are these enormous, complex industrial beasts.
They are some of the most complex machines we've ever built. And here's the problem. A refinery uses a tremendous amount of its own energy to operate. It needs huge amounts of heat and electricity to crack the long hydrocarbon chains in crude oil into useful products.
And where does that energy come from?
They often run on their own dedicated natural gas cogeneration plants. So if the natural gas feed to the country is cut, the refinery itself shuts down. It has the crude oil sitting offshore in a tanker, but it has no power to process it.
It's that chicken and egg problem again.
It is. You need refined fuel to run the pumps and trucks to get the crude to the refinery, and you need electricity from natural gas to run the refinery to make the refined fuel. If they both start at the exact same moment...
You can't jumpstart the system. There's no spark.
Exactly. The entire system is designed for continuous flow. It has almost no capacity for a black start.
A black start. That sounds ominous. And that brings us perfectly to Section 2, the grid and the cloud. Because if the truck stopping is a heart attack for the economy, the grid failing is, what, brain death?
That's a very good way to put it. It is.
Yeah.
And this is where we have to tackle a really, really common misconception. I hear it all the time. People say, well, we have so much solar and wind now. Even if we lost all the coal and gas plants, surely we'd just have power sometimes, right? Like, when the sun is shining, the lights come on.
I have to admit, that's kind of my default assumption. I see solar panels on my neighbor's roofs. Why wouldn't they just keep working?
Because of physics. Specifically, two concepts: grid inertia and frequency.
Okay, break that down for me.
The electrical grid is one single, giant, interconnected machine that has to spin in perfect unison. In North America, that's at exactly 60 hertz. In Europe, it's 50 hertz. It cannot deviate. It has to be perfectly synchronized.
I like your analogy from the notes. It's like a band playing perfectly in tempo.
It's exactly like that. And the drummers of the band, the things keeping that heavy, steady, reliable beat, are the massive spinning turbines in coal, gas, and nuclear plants. They weigh hundreds of tons, they have immense physical mass, they have inertia.
So they don't like to speed up or slow down quickly.
Precisely. So if a big cloud suddenly covers a 1,000,000-panel solar farm in Arizona, the power output wants to dip, and the grid frequency wants to wobble. But the sheer physical inertia of those giant spinning turbines smooths it out. It keeps the beat steady.
So what happens in our scenario when you suddenly remove all the gas and coal turbines?
You lose the drummers, you lose the inertia. All you're left with are solar and wind, which are what engineers call inverter-based resources. They're purely electronic. They have no physical mass, no inertia. So without the base load of gas peaker plants to constantly regulate the frequency, the grid becomes incredibly brittle, fragile.
So what would that look like in practice on day 1 or day 2?
Okay, so everyone wakes up, the sun comes up, the solar panels start producing power, people start turning on their lights, their coffee makers. Demand spikes. But it's not a smooth, predictable spike. The supply from renewables is also fluctuating wildly with every cloud and every change in wind speed. The grid operator, who is now flying blind, can't match supply and demand in real time.
Then the tempo breaks.
The tempo breaks.
Yeah.
The frequency might drop from 60 hertz to, say, 59.5 hertz. To a human, that's nothing. But to the grid's safety systems, that's a catastrophe. Automated safety breakers all across the country will trip simultaneously to protect expensive equipment like transformers from melting.
And the whole thing just goes dark.
A system-wide blackout. And we're not talking about a rolling brownout where they cut power to one neighborhood for an hour. We're talking about a continental-scale grid failure. And this leads to the black start problem you mentioned. This is the scenario that keeps grid operators awake at night.
Explain what a black start actually is.
So if the entire grid goes down, and I mean all of it, coast to coast, you have a fundamental problem. You need electricity to start a power plant.
Right. You need power to run the coolant pumps, the control systems, the computers, even before you can generate a single watt.
Exactly. Normally, if a plant in Ohio goes down, it can borrow a little bit of power from the grid in Pennsylvania to get its own turbines spinning again. But if Pennsylvania is dark, and Indiana is dark, and everyone is dark,
You're stuck. There's nowhere to borrow from.
you're completely stuck. The procedure for a black start requires you to use small, independent power sources, usually big diesel generators, to start up one of the smaller gas turbine plants. Then you use that plant to energize a small section of the grid, and you use that section to start a slightly bigger plant, and you slowly, carefully piece the whole thing back together over days or weeks.
But wait, the whole premise of our scenario is
We don't have diesel,
Yeah.
and we don't have natural gas, so the grid goes down and it stays down.
that feels permanent.
What about nuclear? Because nuclear plants don't need a constant supply of fossil fuels to actually generate heat, right? The reaction just goes.
That's true, in theory.
Yeah.
But in practice, nuclear power plants are incredibly needy. They are the opposite of set it and forget it. When the grid collapses, the nuclear reactor has to perform an emergency shutdown called a scram.
Okay.
But even when it's shut down, the nuclear fuel is still mind-bogglingly hot. It's still producing decay heat from radioactive decay. It needs to have cooling water constantly circulated through the core for weeks, sometimes months, to prevent a meltdown.
And I'm guessing those massive cooling pumps run on electricity.
They run on a lot of electricity. So when the grid dies, the nuclear plant automatically switches over to its on-site backup diesel generators. Every plant has them. They're tested every week. They're very reliable.
But they run on diesel.
They run on diesel.
Yeah.
And they typically have enough fuel stored on-site for about 3 to 7 days of continuous operation.
And in our day zero world, the diesel resupply trucks aren't coming? They are not. So day 7 of our simulation becomes a very, very scary day. Because if the grid still hasn't been brought back up and the diesel fuel for the backup generators runs out, the cooling pumps stop. The water in the reactor core boils off. The fuel rods are exposed, they overheat, and they melt.
You're talking about potential Fukushima-style events, but at dozens of sites all at once.
You're looking at a widespread radiological crisis layered on top of the energy and logistics crisis. It really changes the stakes from this is a major inconvenience to large parts of the country could become uninhabitable.
That really puts a damper on that, well, my solar panels will save me idea.
It does. It shows how everything is connected to everything else.
Let's pivot from the physical grid to the ethereal one, the digital fade.
Yeah.
We think of the internet as this magical cloud that just exists, but it's not. It's intensely physical. It's just servers in a building.
It's massive windowless warehouses full of millions of computers that do nothing but generate immense amounts of heat. Their primary job, besides processing data, is getting rid of that heat. They need constant, powerful air conditioning and cooling systems. No grid power, no cooling. The servers will automatically shut down to protect themselves from melting.
And the impact of that isn't just that I can't check my social media feed.
Oh, not at all. The first and most catastrophic failure is the financial system.
I was thinking about this. Money isn't real anymore. It's just data. It's numbers in a spreadsheet somewhere.
100%. High-frequency trading, which is most of the stock market, bank-to-bank transfers, your credit card processing at the store, it all relies on nanosecond synchronization between data centers that could be thousands of miles apart. If the power starts to fluctuate or just dies, that global ledger freezes solid.
So let's fantasize about this.
Yeah.
It's day 2 or day 3. The power is out. You walk to the corner store, assuming it's even open, which it probably isn't. You have your credit card.
It's a useless piece of plastic.
You have Apple Pay on your phone.
Your phone is dead. The terminal is dead. It's useless.
Okay, so you have cash. You have a $100 bill.
Now it gets interesting. Cash only works if the cashier and you both agree on what $100 is worth. In a situation of pure panic and uncertainty, the entire unit of account function of money breaks down. What is a can of beans worth on day 0? Is it $5? Is it $500? Or is its real price 1 silver bracelet?
The entire price discovery mechanism of the global economy, which is all digital, it just evaporates.
It vanishes overnight, barter becomes the default, but nobody knows the exchange rate for anything. It's economic chaos.
So just to recap where we are after maybe 72 hours, we have a frozen supply chain, we have a dead electrical grid, we have a looming nuclear crisis, and we have no functional way to pay for anything.
A pretty grim picture.
And now we get to the part that actually starts to kill people in large numbers. Section 3, the nitrogen crisis.
This is what the report calls the hunger. And to understand this, we have to talk about probably the most important person of the 20th century that almost nobody has ever heard of. Fritz Haber.
The Haber-Bosch process. I think we all learned it in high school chemistry and then immediately forgot it.
We shouldn't have. It's arguably the most important industrial process ever invented. It takes nitrogen, which is abundant in the air all around us, and uses incredibly high pressure and high heat.
Generated by burning natural gas.
Generated by burning natural gas to fuse it with hydrogen, also from natural gas, to create ammonia, NH3, synthetic fertilizer.
And the report had this statistic that it stopped me in my tracks. It said approximately 50% of the nitrogen in the average human body today originated from this industrial process.
Just sit with that for a second. Think about what that actually means. It means the Earth's natural nitrogen cycle, using manure, crop rotation, letting fields lie fallow, all the old ways, can naturally support a global population of maybe 4 billion people. Top.
We have 8 billion people.
We have 8 billion. The other 4 billion of us, half the people on this planet, exist because we figured out how to turn natural gas into food.
We are literally eating fossil fuels.
One step removed, yes. We are fossil fuel beings,
Yeah.
So if you cut off the natural gas supply, you cut off the fertilizer production. It's a direct link.
And without that synthetic fertilizer, crop yields they crash.
They don't just dip a little, it's a collapse. For modern high-yield crops like corn and wheat, which have been specifically bred over decades to be incredibly hungry for nitrogen, you'd see yields drop by 40 to 60%.
In the very first harvest cycle.
In the very first harvest cycle. Modern industrial agriculture, for the most part, doesn't treat soil as a living ecosystem. It treats it as an inert chemical medium to just hold the plant upright while you pump it full of chemical nutrients, take away the chemicals, and the system fails.
And this gets even more complicated when you look at it geopolitically, doesn't it? Because not every country actually feeds itself.
Not even close. This is the whole concept of calorie exports. There are only a handful of major breadbasket nations: the United States, Canada, Russia, Ukraine, Brazil, Argentina. These are the calorie exporters. They grow far more food than their own populations can eat.
And then most of the rest of the world are importers.
Right. Highly developed places like Europe and Japan, populous places like China, arid places like the Middle East, they are all massive calorie importers. They cannot survive without a constant flow of grain and soybeans on ships.
So in our day zero scenario, the ships stop. The global trade in food just ends.
The global buffet closes instantly. And if you live in a country that imports, say, 60% of its food, you now have a very stark, brutal mathematical problem. There's simply not enough calories within your borders to keep your population alive for very long.
That has to lead to immediate draconian rationing, the government seizing all available food stockpiles.
It would have to be martial law. It's the only way to prevent riots and hoarding. But even then, you face the same old problem. How do you distribute it? Remember, the trucks don't work. The last mile problem applies to emergency government rations just as much as it does to Doritos. You might have a mountain of wheat in a central silo, but the people starving in the city, 200 miles away, can't get to it.
Let's try to make this personal for a second. Let's invent a person to fantasize about. Let's call him Alex. He's a graphic designer. He lives in a nice condo in a big city, say Chicago. Maybe the 25th floor. It's day 5 of this scenario. What's his life like?
Okay, so the power has been out for days. That means the elevator in his building is dead. He's walking up and down 25 flights of stairs if he wants to go outside, which is exhausting when you're not eating much.
And the water.
The tap is dry. That's the detail people always miss. In a high-rise city, water doesn't just flow magically. It has to be pumped up to water towers on the roofs of buildings. Gravity brings it down, but electricity gets it up there in the first place. No grid power, no water pressure above the first few floors.
So Alex has no running water. His toilet doesn't flush. The sanitation situation in that building is getting grim fast. He's probably eating whatever was in his pantry, some crackers, maybe the last of the peanut butter. What does he do? Was his next move.
He has a terrible realization. He realizes he's living in a trap, a vertical trap. A city is not a self-sufficient organism. It's a machine for processing vast amounts of resources. Food, water, energy brought in from the outside. When the outside stops bringing things in, the city doesn't just become inconvenient, it becomes a tomb. Alex has to leave. He has to get out.
And this is what triggers the next phase in the report, Section 4, the geography of survival. The Great Migration.
It's not just Alex, it's millions of people in cities all over the world, all having the same horrifying realization at roughly the same time. The city is not safe. They start to stream out on foot with whatever they can carry. But the question is, where are they going?
The suburbs, right. That seems like the logical first step.
That's the first instinct for everyone. I'll go to the suburbs, there are big houses, there are lawns, there's more space. But the report really challenges this idea. It calls the modern suburb the green desert.
The green desert? Why? I mean, I have a lawn, it's green. I could plant potatoes.
Could you? Right now, today. Do you have the seed potatoes? Do you own a shovel or a hoe? Do you know how to break up sod and condition soil? Most suburban topsoil was stripped away during construction. What's left has been compacted and doused in herbicides and pesticides for decades to make a perfect monoculture of grass grow. It's not farmland, it's an outdoor carpet.
And even if I could get a potato to grow, that takes, what, 90, 100 days? I'm hungry now. I need food for tomorrow.
Exactly. The suburbs are a food desert by design. They are built with the assumption that you will get in your car, which no longer works, and drive to a supermarket, which is empty. So the migration moves through and past the suburbs. It's looking for something more fundamental. Water. It heads for the rivers, the lakes. Because if all the electric pumps that run our municipal water systems have failed, the only source of fresh water is surface water. We would instantly revert to the settlement patterns of the 1700s. people clustering in small groups around sources of fresh, flowing water.
That sounds almost, I don't know, idyllic in a strange way, returning to nature, but it's actually the setup for the next great disaster.
It is disease. Which brings us to Section 5. The material world dissolves.
This, the grim reality of what the report calls the filter event. It's not just about starvation. It's about hygiene. It's about sanitation.
We don't think of waste management as a fossil fuel industry, but it absolutely is. It's diesel garbage trucks, it's electric sewage treatment plants.
And a modern sewage treatment plant is a huge energy hog.
A monster. It uses massive aeration pumps and all sorts of machinery to break down biological waste safely. If the power to that plant fails, the raw sewage from the city just backs up. Eventually it overflows, and it overflows directly into the rivers.
The same rivers that everyone is now gathered around drinking from.
The same rivers, so you get cholera, you get dysentery, you get typhoid. The great waterborne diseases of the 19th century return with a terrifying vengeance.
And this is where the material world part of it kicks in. Because now people are getting sick, they try to go to a hospital. But the hospital itself is in the middle of a catastrophic crisis.
This is what the report calls the crisis of sterility.
Explain that.
Modern medicine is built on a mountain of single-use disposable plastics. Syringes, IV bags, catheters, surgical gloves, sterile packaging. We use them once and we throw them away to prevent the spread of infection.
And every single one of those things is made from petroleum byproducts.
Every last one. And with the supply chain gone, there are no replacements coming. So the doctor's forced to go back in time. Maybe she has an old glass syringe she can reuse. She has to boil it between patients to try and sterilize it. We go back to reusable equipment, which immediately sends hospital-acquired infection rates through the roof.
But it's even worse than that, right? It's not just the equipment. It's the medicine itself.
It's the actual pharmaceuticals, antibiotics.
Yeah.
The vast majority of the chemical precursors for modern drugs, everything from aspirin to antibiotics to chemotherapy agents, come from the petrochemical industry. They're derived from coal tar and oil refining byproducts. Without that industrial feedstock and without the complex energy-intensive factories to process them, we can't make new Tylenol. We can't make new amoxicillin.
So a simple scratch on your leg that you got while scavenging for firewood could get infected, turn septic, and kill you.
Yes.
Just like it would have in 1850.
Yes. The entire safety buffer of modern life that protects us from the consequences of small mistakes is just removed.
This brings up the idea of scavenging. The report says that after the initial shock, material scavenging becomes the new dominant economy.
That's a key transition. In Phase 1, in the first few weeks, you scavenge for food, canned goods, anything left in abandoned stores. But in Phase 2, once the immediate food crisis stabilizes a bit, you start to scavenge for materials. And this is where plastic becomes gold.
Explain that. That seems so counterintuitive. We hate plastic now. We see it as worthless trash.
We see it as trash because it's cheap and unbelievably abundant. In a day-zero world, it's a finite, precious resource. Think about a simple 5-gallon plastic bucket. It's a miracle object, it's lightweight, it's waterproof, it's durable. You can use it to carry clean water, to wash things, to store grain. Now, try to make a new bucket out of wood that's as good and doesn't leak. It's incredibly difficult.
So people stop throwing things away?
Nothing gets thrown away because there is no away anymore, and there are no replacements coming from a factory in China.
There is no away. I like that phrase. It really sticks with you.
It forces a complete psychological shift in how we value objects. A plastic tarp that you can use to patch your roof is suddenly worth more than a stack of $100 bills. A set of Tupperware containers becomes a family heirloom passed down through generations.
Okay, so let's fast forward. We've somehow survived the initial shock. The global population has contracted, to put it mildly and sadly. The cities are largely empty. People are living in smaller communities. The suburbs are being slowly, painfully dug up for gardens. We are a few years into this new world. This is Phase 4, the energy renaissance and resource wars.
This is the rebuilding phase, and it's where we run headfirst into what the report calls the lithium and copper paradox.
Okay, what's the paradox? We still have the knowledge, right? We haven't forgotten how to build solar panels or wind turbines. Why don't we just bootstrap a clean energy utopia right away?
Because you need to spend a massive amount of energy to build energy harvesting machinery. That's the paradox. To mine lithium for batteries, right now, we use gigantic diesel-powered excavators and haul trucks. To get copper for wiring, you have to crush millions of tons of rock using energy-intensive industrial crushers. To melt sand into the pure silicon needed for solar panels, you need incredibly hot electric arc furnaces.
And we don't have the diesel to run the excavators or the reliable grid power to run the furnaces.
Exactly. We are trapped. We are trying to build a new, high-energy infrastructure, but we only have low-energy tools to do it with. It's like trying to build a modern skyscraper using only Roman-era tools. It might be theoretically possible, but it would be excruciatingly painfully slow.
The report has a great term for this period. It calls it energy austerity.
That's what it is. We have to learn to live on a tiny fraction of the energy we used before, and we have to scavenge the old world to get the materials to build the new one. This is where the concept of urban mines comes in.
Urban mines.
Yeah. People aren't going into the abandoned skyscrapers to live. They're too dangerous and impractical. They're going in as miners to systematically strip the copper wiring out of the walls, to take the steel beams, the glass, the aluminum.
So the copper wiring from the walls of the Empire State Building becomes the new transmission line for the little microgrid in a village in the Hudson Valley.
Precisely. And the grid itself changes fundamentally. It probably stops being a high-voltage AC or alternating current grid and becomes a low-voltage DC direct current grid.
Why that specific technical change?
Because it's more efficient on a small scale. Solar panels produce DC power natively. Batteries store and release DC power. LED lights, which are super efficient, run on DC. If you're building a small, local, islanded grid for just your village, it makes way more sense to just keep everything DC and avoid the energy losses you get from converting it back and forth to AC.
So the new world is a low-voltage world. It's safer, but the power doesn't travel as far.
Exactly. It reinforces localism. And this all completely rewrites the map of geopolitics, too. This is the resource wars part.
The map shifts.
The map completely shifts. Who cares about the Strait of Hormuz in the Middle East if there's no oil to ship through it? The new strategic choke points on the globe are the lithium salt flats in the Atacama Desert in Chile or the cobalt mines in the Congo.
But who has the power to go and take those resources? Whose military can still function?
That's the interesting question. The report suggests that the nations that stabilize the fastest are the ones that either manage to keep a fleet of nuclear power plants running through the crisis,
Like France.
like France or parts of the US and China. Or, and this is a strange twist, it's the nations that have the most available manual labor. High-tech militaries with jet fighters and aircraft carriers become almost useless because they have no fuel. A low-tech, infantry-heavy army that can march and sustain itself off the land suddenly becomes dominant again. It's a great reset of global power.
Let's bring it back to the people on the ground again. Section 7. The return of labor. You used a fascinating term earlier, energy slaves. Let's unpack that.
This is a concept that goes back to thinkers like Buckminster Fuller. 1 barrel of crude oil contains the energy equivalent of about 1,700 kilowatt hours of work. That is roughly the same amount of work a healthy human being can perform through manual labor for 8 to 10 years.
Wait, say that again? 1 barrel of oil is 10 years of human work.
Roughly, yes. So for the last 100 years, every single one of us in the developed world has been living like an ancient aristocrat, with hundreds, if not thousands, of invisible, silent energy slaves doing our bidding 247.
You push a pedal in your car and 2,000 pounds of steel and glass moves you down the road. You flip a switch and a machine scrubs your laundry for you.
Exactly. When the oil and gas go away, all of those slaves die all at once in all of that work. It has to be done again, but this time it has to be done by human muscle or maybe animal muscle.
That would flip our entire social hierarchy completely upside down.
A total inversion. Think about the white-collar professional class, the managers, the marketing consultants, the data analysts, the investment bankers. Their highly valuable skill sets are entirely tied to the complexity of the system that just evaporated.
I'm really good at making PowerPoint presentations. Doesn't help you figure out how to plant potatoes or fix a broken water pump.
No. And it would create a profound crisis of identity and purpose for millions of people. Suddenly, the most valuable person in the entire community is the quiet old woman who knows which mushrooms are safe to eat. It's the guy who knows how to rewind the copper coils on a broken electric motor. It's the blacksmith. It's the carpenter. It's the bicycle mechanic.
The bicycle logic. I love that part of the report.
The bicycle is, pound for pound, the most energy-efficient transportation machine ever created by humans. It's even more efficient than a person walking. In a world where every single calorie you eat is precious and hard-won, the bicycle is king. It allows you to move yourself in a surprising amount of cargo over long distances with a minimal input of food energy.
So the abandoned interstate highways aren't empty. They're just
Right.
different. They're full of people on bicycles, pulling carts, maybe some rickshaws.
It would look a lot like pictures of urban China or Europe in the early 20th century. High-density mobility, but with extremely low energy consumption.
Okay, let's look further out. Let's go to year 10. This is the long-term equilibrium. We've stopped the massive die-off. We've figured out how to grow food locally. Society has stabilized into a new, smaller form. What does life look and feel like?
I think the first thing you'd notice is that it's much slower, it's much quieter, and it's much smaller. Your entire world shrinks.
That trendy urban planning concept, the 20-minute city, becomes a reality, but not because it's a cool idea.
It becomes a prison of physics, an absolute necessity. Your world is defined by the distance you can comfortably walk or bike in a day. If your food is grown 10 miles away, that's a significant journey to go get it. So cities, or what's left of them, become these dense nodes of hyper-local agriculture.
The report has this very sci-fi image of skyscrapers being turned into vertical farms. Let's be real, is that actually practical?
It's probably not very efficient, but in some places it might be necessary. You can't use an electric pump to get water to the 50th floor anymore, but maybe you can rig up a wind-driven mechanical pump. You can use the vast expanses of south-facing glass as greenhouses. You could keep chickens or rabbits on the balconies. It's not going to be the shiny, clean solar punk art you see online. It's going to be messy. It's going to smell like manure and compost. But it might be what keeps people fed in a dense area.
And what about knowledge?
Yeah.
What happens to our digital world, to the internet?
The cloud, as we know it, is just too heavy to lift in an energy-scarce world. Streaming a 4K video requires an obscene amount of energy when you factor in the data centers, the cooling, the network infrastructure. We just can't afford that energy anymore.
So the internet doesn't die, it just reverts.
It reverts to its 1990s form, mostly text, maybe some very low-resolution images. It becomes a utilitarian tool again. A vast digital library, not a 24/7 entertainment on-demand fire hose.
So you'd use it to download a blueprint for how to build a better water wheel, but you wouldn't use it to stream the latest Marvel movie.
Precisely. And that makes physical knowledge precious again. Literacy becomes a vital skill. Physical books make a huge comeback because they don't run on batteries. The local town library, full of dusty old technical manuals and farming almanacs, becomes the most important building in town again.
It sounds incredibly hard. It sounds like a massive step backward. But the report concludes with this really interesting idea of it being a filter event.
Yes, it argues that this scenario isn't an extinction event for humanity. It's a metabolic correction, a very, very painful one.
We are currently burning through what they call exosomatic energy. That's energy consumed outside our own bodies at a rate that is just completely, fundamentally unsustainable.
We're living on a giant one-time inheritance, a trust fund of ancient, buried sunlight in the form of fossil fuels. And we've been spending it like drunken sailors for 150 years.
Yeah.
When the trust fund finally runs dry, we have to go out and get a real job. We have to learn to live on our daily allowance.
On the real-time energy budget of the planet, the sunlight that hits the earth each day, the wind that blows.
It's a harsh graduation into energy adulthood.
It is. But the society that emerges on the other side of that filter is, by default, sustainable. It has no choice. It's not burning the geological past to fuel the present anymore.
It's a world forced into balance.
So, okay, we've pretty much terrified everyone. We've killed the grid, we starved the suburbs, we've brought back cholera, but we've also shown a path, however difficult, to how humans could adapt.
We are nothing if not adaptable. We're like cockroaches in that respect. We can survive almost anything. We just really, really hate change. This scenario is the ultimate forced change.
Before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with a specific task, a little thought experiment to do at home. We've been talking about day zero. I want you to go home tonight and do a day zero audit of your own life.
This is a great exercise. I really recommend it.
Walk through your house and, really look at it. Touch every object. If it's made of plastic, you have to assume it's gone forever or completely irreplaceable once it breaks. If it plugs into a wall, assume it's a useless brick.
Then go to your pantry.
Go to your pantry, read the labels on your food. If it came from more than 100 miles away, in your mind, take it off the shelf. It's not there.
And don't forget your medicine cabinet.
Oh, absolutely. Look at your medicine cabinet. What's left after all of that? That little pile of stuff. That's your day zero kit. That's your starting baseline.
It's a very humbling pile, usually.
It's incredibly humbling. But knowing what's in that pile is the first step. And maybe it encourages you to buy a good hand crank can opener tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or maybe learn a practical skill, like how to sew a button or sharpen a knife.
Or maybe, and this is the most important one, just get to know your neighbors a little bit better. Because in the end, they are the single best survival tool you will ever have.
Amen to that. Thank you for taking this deep, dark, but I think necessary dive with us today.
Always a pleasure. It's important stuff to think about.
Stay curious and maybe stay a little prepared. We'll see you in the next deep dive.